It looks like West Virginia will be losing their running backs coach and former offensive coordinator Chad Scott to the Texas Longhorns, and West Virginia fans are in panic mode. Is it justified? We're going to talk about that in this episode, which is brought to you by BetUS Online and Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law. So stay tuned, and we'll have that conversation, and I'll give you my thoughts right after this. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner, your home for top shelf college football news and analysis, usually surrounding the West Virginia Mountaineers or the Big 12. Thank you for tuning into the show. On tap today, we're talking about the news that West Virginia running backs coach, former OC Chad Scott, appears to be leaving Morgantown to be the running backs coach for the Texas Longhorns. That's right, the Longhorns, the Shorthorns, whatever you want to call them. Chad Scott looks to be going there. And a lot of West Virginia fans on social media are in panic mode. I'm going to talk about whether that's justified or not and give you the kind of the pros and cons of this move. Now, it sounds like there may not be a lot of pros to it, but we'll get to that in the second half of the show. But first, let's talk about the news. I'm going to pull up an article from on3.com, and we're going to talk about this. It says, this is written by Pete Nakos over at On3. It says, Texas is expected to hire West Virginia running backs coach Chad Scott as its next running backs coach, multiple sources tell On3. Scott was the offensive coordinator for the previous 2 seasons for the Mountaineers before being retained by Rich Rodriguez. The Mountaineers ranked in the top 10 among Power 4 schools in rushing the last 2 seasons. Scott was interim head coach after the Mountaineers dismissed Neil Brown in the fall. Scott helped develop C.J. Donaldson into one of the top running backs in the Big 12, too. Donaldson rushed for 2,058 career rushing yards in 3 seasons at West Virginia, posting 30 touchdowns while averaging 4.9 yards per carry. He transferred to Ohio State this offseason. Texas running backs coach Tashard Choice recently took a role on the Detroit Lions staff, opening up the job on the Texas staff. Before joining the West Virginia staff in 2019, Scott made stops at Texas Tech, Kentucky, and North Carolina. West Virginia finished with 2,976 rushing yards in 2023, ranking number 1 among Power 5 schools. In Big 12 games, WVU was the only school to finish with more than 2,000 rushing yards, led the league in rushing yards per game, and tied for number 1 in rushing touchdowns. Scott will take over a Texas running back room that returns C.J. Baxter, who missed the 24 season with an injury. The former 5-star recruit rushed for 659 yards as a freshman in 2023. Now, that's all I'm going to read of the article. That's from On3. This came out last night, right around the time West Virginia was playing their basketball game against Cincinnati. And West Virginia fans took to social media, many of them in panic mode. And I'm here to tell you, I think that is a little overblown. Now, or that's an overreaction. Is it a good thing that Chad Scott's leaving? No, I don't think it's a good thing. Chad Scott is a great coach. He's the one coach that almost all West Virginia fans thought should be kept, at least the majority of them. One of the few from Neil Brown's staff. He's a great recruiter. His room, the running back room, has been good ever since he got there for the most part. Even in years when their offensive line was young and wasn't performing up to par, they still had a good running game. I mean, Letty Brown rushed for over 1,000 yards behind that young offensive line. So the running backs performed for the most part. And then you bring in C.J. Donaldson. He turns him from a tight end into a star running back. We saw Jahiem White run for over 800 yards as a true freshman in I think he played less than 10 games that year. Averaged over 7 yards a carry. So he's had a great career so far at West Virginia. So Chad Scott is a good coach. For those of you going, and those of you going after Chad Scott on social media, saying bad things about him, knock that crap off, man. Chad Scott's a good guy by all accounts. He's done a good job at West Virginia. He's given his time, his heart, soul to this program. And he's taking a job at Texas, folks. It's not like this is a lateral move. It's not like he's taking a step down. I doubt he's taking a pay cut, which we'll get to that in a minute. But it's Texas. Almost any coach in America would take that job. It's a great resume builder. And who knows, maybe after spending some time with Rodriguez, maybe he feels like he's not a fit at West Virginia now. I don't know. But people need to knock off the negativity towards Chad Scott. We can't expect coaches to come here and stay here forever, especially when they have no ties to the program or to the state. It's just not the world we live in. Most of us will take better opportunities when they come along in our careers, especially if we are wanting to move up the ladder. So I don't think we should be mad at Chad Scott for doing this. And I think he'll do a great job at Texas. He's a great coach. I have no doubt about it. And it is a big loss because he's, like I said, he is a great recruiter. And he does do a good job of coaching running backs.
Are you looking for a brand new sports book? If so, look no further than our good friends over at BetUS Online. Right now, with promo code YouTube150, you get a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. That's right, 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit. You also get a 125% sign-up bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000. That's with promo code YouTube150 to get that 150% bonus today. If you do play, please make sure to play responsibly. And remember, you must be 18 years of age or older to play. Now, let's get back to the show.
And there's also the question about Jahiem White. Will Jahiem White follow Chad Scott? And that's a great question. Now, personally, I put it at about 50-50 that Jahiem White will leave in the spring portal. Jahiem White said, or at least indicated in a Instagram live that he did a few weeks back, someone asked him, hey, had Chad Scott not been retained, would you have left? And he didn't answer verbally, but he shook his head yes, that he would have. So it's possible that Jahiem White leaves. Now, it's also possible that he don't. So I don't think we should just assume he's going to leave. After spending an entire offseason with the Rich Rod staff, after going through spring camp, which he will be doing here starting today, Thursday, February 20th, or at least, well, I think it starts next week, actually. But nonetheless, you get my point. They start spring camp very soon. Maybe he realizes he's going to like playing for that staff. Maybe he thinks he'll be successful under that staff. Maybe he'll end up having a good relationship with whoever they hire to replace Chad Scott, if anybody. There are guys on the staff who could probably coach the position. One guy named Pat White, who has coached running backs in his career at the HBCU level and at the G5 level and FCS level. So he has done it. Travis Trickett's on staff. I'm sure he could coach running backs with his experience. Noel Devine is there. Now, he has limited coaching experience, but he has played the position, so he could help. So I think West Virginia will be okay at the running backs coach spot, whether Jahiem White leaves or not. And why do I think that? Well, look at Rich Rod's track record. Let's go all the way back to his days West Virginia. Steve Slayton, Noel Devine, Quincy Wilson, Avon Coburn. 4 of the best running backs to ever play at WVU all played for Rich Rodriguez. Now, Avon Coburn only played one season under Rodriguez, but he had a good season. And all 4 of those guys played in the NFL in some capacity. With Steve Slayton being a draft pick, and I think he had a 5-year career in the NFL. Oh, and can't forget Owen Schmidt. The list goes on and on. Let's look at some of his other stops. Let's go all the way back to his days at Michigan. Michigan wasn't that good under him because they were making a complete rebuild. But all 3 years at Michigan, he had guys rush for at least 500 yards or more, and they averaged over 5 yards a carry. 2 of those 3 years, his leading running back did. And that was Brandon Miner. Averaged 5.2 yards per carry in 2008 and 2009 under Rich Rodriguez. And let's not forget he had Denard Robinson at quarterback, so that took some of the pressure and some of the carries off his running backs. So they didn't have to do as much, right? Well, let's fast forward to his days at Arizona. His first 3 years at Arizona, he had someone rush for over 1,000 yards. Kadeem Carey, his first 2 seasons, or Rich Rod's first 2 seasons at Arizona, he had a guy named Kadeem Carey who was an absolute stud. In 2012, Kadeem Carey carried the ball 303 times for 1,929 yards, averaged 6.4 yards per carry, darn near a 2,000-yard rusher. In 2013, the following year, Carey ran 349 times for 1,885 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. So again, over 5 yards a carry 2 seasons in a row, and that's with over 300 carries each year. That's pretty impressive. Well, once Kadeem Carey left, you fast forward, they bring in a guy named Nick Wilson. In 2014, he carried it 236 times for 1,375 yards, averaged 5.8 yards per carry. Now, after Wilson, they relied more on the running back run game. They had a guy named Khalil Tate, who was a great runner at quarterback. So he got a lot more carries. But they still had guys averaging over 5 yards a carry for the most part, almost every season. They just limited their carries because they didn't need them because they had a running quarterback. Jacksonville State, 2024, he had Trey Stewart, who ran 278 times for 1,638 yards. Also had a quarterback that ran for over 1,300 yards in Tyler Huff. So, listen, Rich Rod has a track record of having good running backs at every stop he's made, folks. You combine that with the running quarterbacks he normally has, the running game will be just fine at West Virginia. As long as the offensive line holds up and plays well, the running game will be just fine in Morgantown. I'm telling you, we don't need to panic. I don't want to lose Jahiem White. I think he has a chance to be one of the all-time greats at West Virginia if he stays. I think he can get drafted in the NFL playing under Rich Rod. I think he's that good. I think he could be a first or at least second-day draft pick. But let's not get carried away here. He's not the only running back in America. And Chad Scott's not the only running backs coach in America. Yes, they're good, and I don't want to lose them. But Rich Rod will coach up his running backs, and they will be successful because he has proven it time and time and time again. And there's one more pro here, or there is a pro to losing Chad Scott. Right now, West Virginia's paying him $700,000 for his 1 year that's left on his contract because he's still making offensive coordinator money, even though he's not an offensive coordinator anymore. They didn't give him a pay cut. So if he goes to Texas and makes at least what he's making at West Virginia, then that means West Virginia doesn't owe him a dime. If he makes, let's say he makes $500,000 a year at Texas. I'm just throwing that out there as a round number. That means West Virginia only has to pay him about $200,000 this year. So they're still saving that money. Whatever money Texas pays him comes off of what West Virginia owes him on his last year of his contract. So West Virginia is going to save a ton of money that they can put towards either hiring a new coach or maybe 2 new coaches. They can put it potentially towards the revenue share money that they have or will need to pay out. But they can help it, maybe there's some sort of facility upgrades they need to do. They can put it towards that, whatever. It will free up some money for the football program. And you add that into the fact that Rich Rod's track record with running backs, folks, stop panicking. West Virginia is going to be fine at the running back position. And I kind of I love Jahiem White, and I think he'll be the guy. But behind him, I think they've got some talented guys. They brought in Ty Edwards from Northern Iowa. L.J. Turner from the Division II level, who's a stud. Rushed for over 1,000 yards in, I think, 8 games? Over 1,200 yards, actually. Not to mention the really good 2 redshirt freshmen that are on the roster. So don't panic. They're going to be fine. And they can go out in the spring and if Jahiem White leaves, they can go out in the spring portal and get a replacement. So don't panic. West Virginia's going to be fine. The running back room is going to be fine. Wish Chad Scott the best. I appreciate what he's done at West Virginia. I wish him nothing but success in his career. I hope he does a good job at it. I don't want Texas to win a lot of games, but I hope his running back room performs well and he continues to move up the ladder and hopefully lands a job one day as a head coach somewhere. That's what I want for Chad Scott because he deserves it. And I hope you can do the same and find in your heart to do the same because Chad Scott has been nothing but first class since arriving in Morgantown. So anyway, let me know what you think about this situation. Should we be panicking? Is this a terrible, terrible thing? Or is West Virginia going to be just fine? And will they be able to replace Jahiem White if he leaves? What do you think they do to replace Chad Scott, if anything? Do they just promote one of the guys on the staff now to a running backs coach position? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Also, shout out to my VIP channel members of this episode. If you want to become a VIP member and help support the channel in a very inexpensive way and get access to some perks, you can join the VIP club by hitting the join button below or going to my description or to my channel homepage. You'll find it right beside my profile photo. The VIP member shout outs here are Vernon Sheldon Witter, Bill G, Phil LeMasters, Roy Harrison, and PW Riggs. Thank you all for being VIP members. If you're not a VIP member and you don't want to join or can't join, you can still support me by hitting the thumbs up button, subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment, and sharing this with your family and friends who love West Virginia Mountaineer football. Another shout out to my sponsors, Katz, Kenner, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law and BetUS Online. Thank them for helping keep the lights on. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf. There's a video in the corner of your screen that YouTube thinks you might like. There's also one over here from my Hoops from the Hills basketball channel. You might like it too. Q Country Roads.